Have you ever seen a billionaire CEO walk into his ex-fiancée's wedding holding the arm of his own maid, while the entire elite froze in silence, only to realize that the most humiliated person in the room was about to become the one with real control? No one there knew it yet, but that single choice would expose a hidden truth, collapse a carefully built luxury life, and change who truly held power that night. Before we begin, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. These stories only reach more people because of your support. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? John Underwood stood alone in his office, holding the wedding invitation between 2 fingers. Gold edges, heavy paper, Chloe Winfield's name printed in elegant script. His expression did not change. No anger, no regret, only calculation. John was a billionaire CEO, a rich man known for precision. He did not attend social events out of nostalgia. He attended them to close doors. He placed the invitation on the desk. Flat. Final. Going alone would invite questions. Bringing a social equal would invite games. He despised games. John's eyes moved toward the open doorway. The sound of careful footsteps echoed down the hall. Claire. She crossed the marble floor with a quiet rhythm, head slightly lowered, sleeves rolled just enough to work. No makeup, no jewelry, just clean lines and discipline. A poor woman, by society's standards. Invisible, efficient, ignored. She adjusted a vase, aligned a chair, and wiped a surface already spotless. John watched without speaking. Claire was not trying to impress. She never did. That was why she stood out. He remembered the last woman who had stood beside him at a public event. Chloe. Always smiling for others, always calculating the room, always performing. Claire did none of that. "Claire," he said. She stopped immediately, turned, hands folded in front of her. "Yes, sir." No familiarity, no expectation. "I need an escort for an event," John said. Her brow tightened slightly. "Just for a second." "I don't attend events," she replied, calm, respectful. "I know." Silence stretched. "It's a wedding," he continued. "My ex-fiancée's." That landed. Claire's eyes lifted for the first time. Not curious, concerned. "You want me to go with you?" she said. Not a question. "Yes." The air shifted. "I'm not asking you to pretend to be something you're not," John added. "You would attend as you are, with me." Claire hesitated. She thought of the envelope hidden in her drawer, the red notice, the unpaid bills, the rent already late, the pharmacy receipt she couldn't cover. A real financial crisis, no drama, just pressure. "I wouldn't belong there," she said quietly. "That's precisely why," John replied. She searched his face, expecting mockery. None came, only resolve. "You will be compensated," he said, "and protected." Protected. Claire swallowed. This was not opportunity. This was exposure. Mrs. Harper appeared in the doorway, watching silently. She met Claire's eyes and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Claire took a slow breath. "All right," she said, "but I won't lie for anyone." John's jaw tightened. Approval. "I wouldn't ask you to." If you've ever felt like you didn't belong in a room that judged you before you spoke, stay with this story. And if stories about quiet strength matter to you, leave a like. It helps this message reach others. The agreement was set, clean, professional. Yet as Claire turned back toward the hall, John noticed something he hadn't planned for. The room felt different. And for the first time since receiving the invitation, he was no longer thinking about Chloe. Claire stood still in the center of the dressing room, hands clasped, shoulders tight. The space did not belong to her. Tall mirrors, soft lights, racks filled with fabric that cost more than her monthly rent. The smell of perfume and clean silk pressed against her senses. She was a maid stepping into a world built to exclude her. Taylor circled slowly, tablet in hand, eyes sharp and efficient. "We'll need to adjust everything," Taylor said. "This isn't just a wedding, it's a statement." Claire nodded once. No protest. John watched from a chair near the window, silent, observant. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes missed nothing. Taylor pulled a dress from the rack. Too bold, too sharp. "This one will make them stare," Taylor said. "No," John replied immediately. Taylor paused, turned. "She doesn't need to challenge the room," John continued. "She needs to stand in it." A small silence followed. Taylor changed direction, chose something simpler, clean lines, elegant, but restrained. Claire looked at John, surprised. That was the first gesture, not loud, not dramatic, but clear. Protection. She stepped behind the screen and changed. When she emerged, the dress fit her without forcing her into a role. It didn't hide her. It didn't exaggerate her. She still looked like herself. Claire met her reflection. Her face looked unfamiliar, but her eyes were the same. Steady, alert. Taylor reached for jewelry. "No," Claire said softly. Taylor hesitated, looked at John. He nodded. "Leave it," he said. Another line drawn. Taylor moved on without comment. Time passed quickly after that. Adjustments, silence, fabric falling into place. Claire's phone vibrated in her pocket. She didn't check it, but she knew. Another message, another reminder, another number she couldn't make disappear. A poor girl dressed for a room that would never forgive her for existing in it. When they were done, Taylor stepped back. "They'll talk," she said. "They always do." Claire lifted her chin. "They already do," she replied. John stood. "Then they won't control it," he said. He picked up his jacket and moved toward the door, stopping just long enough to look at her again. "You don't owe them anything," he added. "You don't owe me anything either." Claire held his gaze. This was not kindness. It was respect, and it unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. As they walked out together, Mrs. Harper watched from the hallway, her expression unreadable. She had seen many people pass through John Underwood's life, none like this, and none who made him walk beside them instead of ahead. The car door opened. Claire hesitated for a fraction of a second before stepping inside. The social gap had never felt so wide. Yet John didn't rush her. He waited. The door closed behind them, sealing the choice. And the city lights began to blur past the window, carrying them straight toward a room that would test everything they thought they understood about power, class, and dignity. What happens next changes everything. If you're watching until this point, comment, "I'm still here." I read every comment. The venue rose behind iron gates, tall and immaculate. White stone reflected soft lights from the driveway. Glass walls revealed movement inside. Valets lined the entrance, their motions precise, rehearsed. Nothing here was accidental. Everything signaled luxury life without explanation. The car slowed. Claire's fingers tightened slightly in her lap. She had seen buildings like this only from the outside, from across the street, from a distance where admiration mixed with exclusion. The car stopped. The door opened. John stepped out first. The reaction was immediate. Phones lifted. Conversations paused. Names were whispered with recognition. The rich man had arrived, a well-known CEO, often mistaken for a billionaire, cold, precise, and untouchable in rooms like this. John adjusted his jacket, posture calm, face unreadable. He was used to attention. It slid off him like rain. Then he turned back toward the car and waited. Claire hesitated. The moment stretched just long enough for eyes to narrow. Then she stepped out. The air changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. Eyes moved fast. Shoes, dress, hair. They slowed at her face, lingered, judged. A poor woman had exited a car that did not belong to her, exposing the brutal class difference that defined this world. Claire felt it settle over her shoulders, the invisible weight of being counted, categorized, dismissed in seconds. She straightened her spine. John did not move ahead. He extended his arm. The gesture was steady, public, unavoidable. Claire paused only a fraction of a second before placing her hand on his sleeve. The murmurs sharpened. That's his... Is she really... Why would he... The elite did not need answers. They created stories faster than truth. John adjusted his pace, matching hers, slower than usual, intentional. As they walked toward the entrance, a valet stepped forward, eyes flicking to Claire. "Staff entrance is..." he began. John stopped. "She's with me," he said. The valet froze, flushed, then stepped aside. That was the first moment. Not confrontation, correction. They moved forward again. Inside, the hall glowed. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across marble floors. Long tables stretched toward the far end, dressed in white and gold. The air smelled of perfume, champagne, and expensive restraint. Conversations flowed easily, until they noticed Claire. Silence followed them in waves. Claire felt every step echo louder than it should have. She kept her gaze level, refusing to look down. A woman near the bar leaned toward her companion. "She must be staff," she whispered. Claire heard it. John heard it too. He didn't turn this time. He simply slowed again, anchoring their presence. Another guest smiled at John, then glanced at Claire with confusion. "Do you need help finding your seat?" the woman asked Claire politely. "No," Claire replied. "Thank you." The woman blinked, unsettled, and moved away. Across the room, movement stilled near the altar. Chloe Winfield stood surrounded by admiration, her white dress flawless, her posture relaxed. She laughed at something said near her ear, then lifted her gaze. She saw John. Her smile sharpened. Then she saw Claire. For a brief second, Chloe forgot to breathe. Her eyes scanned Claire with precision. Not envy, assessment. She recognized the threat before understanding it. Chloe excused herself smoothly and began walking toward them. Claire felt it coming. The way pressure changes before a storm. John felt it too. He didn't release her arm. They stopped near the center of the room. Chloe reached them with perfect timing, her smile warm, practiced, lethal. "John," she said, "you came." Her eyes stayed on him. She did not acknowledge Claire. That omission was deliberate. The silence stretched. Guests leaned in subtly, pretending not to watch. Claire remained still. Chloe finally turned her gaze, slow and controlled, landing on Claire as if noticing her for the first time. "And you are?" Chloe asked pleasantly. The question hovered, heavy with expectation. Claire answered evenly. "I'm Claire." "Only that." Chloe smiled wider. "How charming," she said. "And do you work for John, or are you assisting him tonight?" A few soft laughs followed. Claire felt the line tighten around her throat. She answered calmly. "I work at his house." There it was. Confirmation. A maid. Chloe's satisfaction flickered. "I see," she said. "How generous." Before she could continue, John spoke. "She's here with me." Chloe turned back to him. "As your employee?" she asked lightly. "As my guest," John replied. The word landed clean and final. The space around them stilled. Chloe's smile wavered, just barely. "Well," she said, recovering. "I hope she feels comfortable. These environments can be overwhelming for people not used to them." Claire met her gaze. "I'm comfortable," she said. "Thank you." No apology, no retreat. Chloe studied her more closely now. Something had gone wrong. She stepped back, smile still in place. "Enjoy the ceremony," she said. "Both of you." As she walked away, the whispers returned, but differently now. Uncertainty had replaced certainty. Claire released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. John leaned closer, his voice low. "You're doing fine." "I'm not trying to do anything," Claire replied. "That's why it's working," he said. They moved toward their seats as music began to swell. Across the room, Chloe took her place near the altar, but her attention was no longer on the ceremony. It was fixed on Claire. The game had begun. And for the first time, Chloe sensed that the rules she relied on might not apply tonight. Chloe stepped closer, her smile perfectly measured. "Of course he came," she said, eyes still on John. "You never miss a chance to make a statement." Her gaze shifted at last. Slow, deliberate. It landed on Claire. For a brief moment, Chloe said nothing. She let the silence do the work. "And you are?" she asked politely. Claire felt the attention tighten around her like a net. Dozens of eyes waited for her to shrink. "I'm Claire," she replied. Only that. Chloe tilted her head. A soft laugh followed. "How lovely," she said. "And do you work for John, or are you helping him tonight?" A ripple of restrained amusement moved through the nearby guests. The question was sharp, elegant, designed to place Claire below everyone else without raising her voice. Claire held her posture. "I work at his house," she said calmly. There it was. A maid, confirmed. Chloe smiled wider. "I see," she said. "That's very generous of you, John, bringing staff to a wedding. Times really are changing." Claire felt the heat rise in her chest, but her face did not change. Before she could respond, John spoke. "She's here with me," he said. Chloe's eyes flicked back to him. "As your employee?" she asked lightly. "As my guest," John replied. The word landed harder than any insult. The space around them went still. Chloe's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. "Well," she said, placing a hand over her chest, "I hope she feels comfortable. These events can be overwhelming for people not used to them." Claire met her gaze. "I'm comfortable," she said. "Thank you." No apology, no embarrassment. Chloe studied her more closely now. This was not the reaction she wanted. "I'm glad," Chloe said. "Just don't wander into restricted areas. The staff corridors can be confusing." A clear line, a public attempt to push Claire back into her assigned place. John moved then. He shifted slightly, positioning himself between Claire and Chloe without breaking eye contact. "She knows where she belongs," he said. "With me." The sentence was short. It ended the exchange. Guests nearby pretended not to listen while listening to everything. Chloe stepped back, lips pressed together. The smile returned, but it no longer reached her eyes. "Enjoy the ceremony," she said. "Both of you." She turned and walked away, heels clicking sharply against the floor. Claire released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. John leaned closer, his voice low. "You handled that well." "I wasn't trying to prove anything," Claire replied. "That's why it worked," he said. Across the room, Chloe rejoined her circle, but her posture had changed. Tighter, alert. She glanced back once more. The elite had expected a spectacle. Instead, they had witnessed something more unsettling. A powerful man had chosen to draw a line, and a poor girl had crossed a room full of judgment without asking permission. The music began to swell, signaling the start of the ceremony. Claire and John moved toward their seats. As they walked, whispers followed, but the tone had shifted. Curiosity had replaced certainty, and somewhere between the altar and the front row, the balance of power in the room tilted, just enough for Chloe to notice. She clenched her bouquet. This was no longer just her wedding. It was a test, and she had not expected to be the one under pressure. The ceremony began, but Claire barely heard the words. The silence that followed Chloe's retreat did not disappear. It simply changed shape. Claire walked beside John toward their seats, aware of every eye tracking her movement. Conversations resumed too quickly, too loudly, as if the room needed to pretend nothing had happened. She sat down carefully. The chair felt colder than she expected. Around her, guests adjusted themselves. Programs unfolded. Jewelry caught the light. Perfume lingered in the air, but the tension remained, stretched thin across the hall. Only then did the ceremony begin. Soft music filled the space, controlled, precise. The officiant spoke, but the words barely reached Claire. She sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, eyes forward. The dress felt heavier now, not because of its fabric, but because of the room. She could feel the attention shifting around her like a low current. People weren't watching the bride anymore. They were watching her, a poor girl, wrongfully judged, quietly mistreated in a room built on rich versus poor rules. Not openly, not yet. They watched through reflections, through tilted heads, through smiles that paused when she turned. A woman 2 rows behind leaned forward. "I still don't understand why he brought her," she whispered. Another voice answered quietly. "To prove something. Or punish Chloe." Claire's jaw tightened. She focused on breathing. Slow, controlled. She had learned long ago how to survive rooms that wanted to shrink her. Her phone vibrated inside her bag. Once, she ignored it. The officiant continued speaking about commitment, partnership, loyalty, words that felt distant, abstract. Her phone vibrated again. She felt the familiar pressure rise behind her ribs. A poor woman didn't get to forget reality just because she was sitting under chandeliers. The message could only be one thing. The landlord didn't send reminders for fun. She shifted slightly in her seat, careful not to draw attention. Another whisper drifted toward her. "She doesn't even look embarrassed." That's the worst part. Claire swallowed. Not embarrassed. Just tired. Tired of being evaluated by people who had never worried about rent. Tired of pretending dignity was invisible. Tired of standing still while others decided what she was worth. Her phone vibrated a 3rd time. That was when her hands began to shake. She closed her fingers together, pressing them into her lap. The ceremony ended with applause. Everyone stood. Claire stood too, a fraction of a second slower than the rest. The room surged forward, bodies brushing past her, conversations restarting as if nothing had happened. A woman passed close enough to murmur, "Bold choice," without looking at her. Another laughed softly. Claire turned toward the corridor without thinking. She didn't look at John. If she did, she might not be able to leave. The restroom door closed behind her with a muted sound. Silence. The contrast was immediate. No music, no whispers, no weight of expectation pressing down. She leaned against the counter, gripping the edge of the sink. Her reflection stared back at her. She looked composed. Too composed. Her phone vibrated again. She pulled it out this time. A short message. Final. No greeting. No courtesy. Just numbers and consequence. Her breath caught. The room tilted slightly. She pressed a hand to her mouth, forcing the sound back. This was the part no one in the other room would ever see, the heartbreaking story behind a woman being judged without knowing the truth. The part that made courage expensive. Tears filled her eyes, spilling before she could stop them. She wiped them quickly, angrily. This was stupid, she whispered to herself. She thought of her small apartment, the narrow kitchen, the second-hand couch, the envelope hidden in the drawer. A single woman didn't have room for mistakes. She had agreed to this because she needed money, and now she was paying for it in public. A knock sounded softly. She froze. Another knock. Careful. Claire. John's voice. Low, controlled, concerned. She stared at the mirror, willing herself to breathe. "I'm fine," she called, though her voice betrayed her. He didn't answer immediately. "I'm right here," he said. "You don't have to open the door." That broke something. She opened it anyway. John stood just outside, far enough to give space, close enough to block the hallway. He took her in with one glance. Red eyes, tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself too carefully. "I didn't mean to cause this," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have left my seat. You didn't cause anything, John replied. You responded. She looked down. I can't do this, she said. I don't belong here. John didn't contradict her. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He held it out without stepping closer. Your compensation, he said. Now. Her eyes flicked to it. I didn't ask for... I know, he said. That's why it's not charity. Her hands trembled as she took it. The weight of it was small. The relief was not. She pressed it against her chest, breathing unevenly. I don't want them thinking, she began. They already think whatever suits them, John interrupted gently. This is about what you need. Tears slid down her face again, silently. He didn't touch her, didn't rush her, just stayed. You can leave, he said quietly. No explanations. I'll handle it. She shook her head slowly. Not yet. She wiped her face again, straightening. I just needed a minute, she said. John nodded. Take another, he replied. I'll be outside. As he stepped back, Claire closed the door once more. She leaned against it, breathing deeply. The tears came again, but this time they carried something else. Relief. Validation. The dangerous warmth of being seen. She didn't know when she would cry again. She only knew this moment would stay with her. When she opened the door a second time, her posture was steadier. John looked up. Ready? He asked. Yes, she said. They walked back toward the hall together. The music swelled again as the doors opened. And as Claire stepped back into the light, envelope secured in her bag, she understood something clearly for the first time that night. Staying would hurt. Leaving would be easier, but staying meant she would no longer be silent. John slowed his pace to match hers. Across the room, Chloe turned slightly, noticing their return. Her eyes narrowed. The next part would not be quiet. They didn't return to the center of the hall right away. John guided Claire toward a quieter section near the tall windows, where the noise softened and the lights dimmed slightly. The city stretched beyond the glass, distant and unreachable. Neither of them spoke at first. Claire stood with her hands loosely clasped in front of her, posture steady again. The signs of crying were subtle now, visible only if someone knew where to look. John knew. He slowed his movements, gave her space. The music from the ceremony faded into something indistinct behind them. You didn't have to come back so quickly, he said. I didn't want to disappear, Claire replied. Not after that. He nodded once. That mattered. A server passed nearby, hesitated, then offered champagne. John declined with a small gesture. The server moved on without comment. Another correction. Quiet, protective. They stood in silence again. The weight between them was different now, not tension, recognition. You don't look surprised, Claire said finally. About what? About how they treated me. John looked past her out the window. I've seen it before, he said. She waited. When Chloe and I were together, he continued, I was invited everywhere, dinners, galas, panels, always introduced the same way. He paused. The CEO, the millionaire, the acquisition. Claire turned slightly toward him. She never corrected it, he said. Not once. He didn't sound angry, just precise. There was an event in Paris, John went on. Early on. I was still new to that world, still believed showing up was enough. He took a slow breath. A man made a joke about where I came from, about how fast I'd risen. Everyone laughed. Claire's jaw tightened. Chloe laughed too, John said. Then she squeezed my arm and told me not to be sensitive. That was the humiliation. Public, polished, unavoidable. I learned something that night, he continued. If you don't control the room, it will control you. Claire understood. So you became colder, she said. Yes. And powerful, she added. Yes. He turned to her then. But it cost me, he said. I stopped noticing when people were hurting, including myself. The music shifted behind them. Laughter rose again somewhere across the hall. Claire folded her arms lightly. "You noticed me," she said. John held her gaze. "Because you weren't trying to take anything," he replied. "You weren't impressed. You weren't afraid." She looked down briefly. "I was afraid," she said. "I just didn't show it." "That's the difference," he said. "You don't use it." A man nearby glanced at Claire, then leaned toward John. "Does she need anything?" he asked casually, voice loud enough to be heard. The implication was familiar. John turned. "She has everything she needs," he said evenly, "including my respect." The man laughed awkwardly and retreated. That was another line drawn. Claire exhaled slowly. "I don't want to be the reason you reopen old wounds," she said. John shook his head. "You didn't reopen them," he replied. "You showed me I never closed them." Silence settled again. Across the room, movement caught Claire's eye. Chloe stood near the bar now, surrounded, smiling. But her gaze kept drifting toward them, watching, measuring. "She's not done," Claire said quietly. "No," John agreed. "She isn't." He shifted slightly closer, lowering his voice. "And neither are they," he added, nodding subtly toward the room. The elite hadn't lost interest. They had lost certainty. Claire felt the weight return, not crushing but present, different this time. "I can leave," she said, "if it makes things easier." John didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was firm. "I spent years choosing what was easier," he said. "I won't do it again." Or that this was the beginning of his own redemption. He offered his arm, not urgently, not possessively, just there. Claire hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she took it. They moved back toward the flow of the reception together. As they walked, conversations shifted, eyes followed, judgments recalculated. Across the hall, Chloe's smile tightened. She watched them approach, noting the change, the closeness, the confidence, the absence of apology. Whatever she had planned next would need to be stronger, more public, more cruel, because silence was no longer working. And as the pressure began to build again, the room unknowingly prepared itself for the next escalation. The shift was subtle at first, not louder voices, not open confrontation, just movement. As John and Claire re-entered the flow of the reception, the space around them adjusted. Conversations leaned closer. Laughter grew slightly forced. People found reasons to pass by their table more often than necessary. Pressure didn't arrive all at once. It accumulated. A woman approached with a smile practiced to perfection. "So," she said, eyes resting on Claire, "how long have you been accompanying John?" The pause before the last word was intentional. Claire met her gaze. "Long enough?" she replied. The woman laughed lightly, unsure whether she'd been answered or dismissed, then excused herself. John didn't react. He didn't need to. A man followed soon after, glass in hand. "You must find all of this fascinating," he said to Claire, "seeing how things work at this level." Claire nodded once. "People are very consistent," she replied, "no matter the level." The man blinked, smiled awkwardly, walked away. Across the room, Chloe noticed. Her fingers tightened around her glass. A server stopped near Claire, tray balanced carefully. "Could you let me pass?" the server asked, distracted. "Staff shouldn't block this area." Claire turned toward him calmly. "I'm not staff," she said. The server flushed. Before he could recover, John stepped slightly forward. "She's with me," he said. "Please be more careful." The server apologized and retreated. That was another gesture. Quiet, public, undeniable. Claire released a slow breath. "You don't have to keep doing that," she said under her breath. "I do," John replied, "because they will keep trying." And they did. A woman brushed past Claire deliberately, shoulder grazing her arm. "Oh, sorry," the woman said without slowing down. The apology was empty. Claire steadied herself. She felt it now. The effort required to remain composed, to not respond the way they expected. This was not about one insult. It was about injustice, class difference, and how easily a poor woman could be publicly embarrassed. Nearby, a small group laughed a little too loudly. "Is this some kind of statement?" one of them asked, not bothering to lower his voice. "It must be," another replied. "He always liked proving points." Claire heard it. John heard it too. He turned slightly, his voice controlled. "This isn't a statement," he said. "It's a boundary." The group fell silent. Eyes dropped. The boundary held, for now. Claire noticed Chloe moving again, weaving through guests with increasing purpose. She stopped near the band, whispered something to a coordinator, laughed once, sharply. "She's planning something," Claire said quietly. "Yes," John replied. "She always does." The music shifted, growing softer, more expectant. A woman approached Claire, her tone falsely kind. "You must be very confident," she said. "I could never walk into a room like this knowing everyone is judging me." Claire met her eyes. "I don't need everyone," she said. "Just myself." The woman stiffened, then smiled thinly and walked away. John watched Claire carefully. "You're holding yourself back," he said. "I'm choosing my moment," Claire replied. That answer surprised him. Across the hall, Chloe reached the center of the room. A microphone appeared in her hand. The movement was unmistakable. The room responded immediately. Conversations died down. Guests turned. Anticipation rippled outward. Claire felt the shift in her chest. This was it. Chloe raised the microphone, her smile perfectly restored. The elite leaned in. John straightened beside Claire, his expression unreadable. He did not reach for her arm this time. He waited. Claire drew a slow breath, grounding herself. Whatever Chloe was about to do, it would not be subtle. The pressure that had been building for the last hour tightened into a single point. Every look, every whisper, every test. They all led here. As Chloe lifted the microphone closer to her lips, the room fell completely silent. And in that silence, Claire understood something with absolute clarity. This was no longer just about humiliation. It was a life-changing, unexpected twist waiting to explode. It was about control. And Chloe was about to try to take it back, publicly. Chloe didn't wait long. She moved toward the center of the room, glass raised, smile restored with precision. The band softened the music. Conversation slowed. Attention followed her without effort. "Don't leave yet. What she's about to say will redefine everything you think this story is about." This was her space. "May I?" Chloe asked the band leader. The microphone was handed to her. Applause rose immediately, warm, loyal, expectant. Claire felt the shift before a word was spoken. John straightened beside her. Chloe waited for silence, then laughed lightly. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she began. "It means everything to be surrounded by people who truly belong in our lives." Her eyes swept the room. Then, casually, they landed on Claire. "And of course," Chloe continued, "we've had some unexpected guests tonight." A few chuckles surfaced, carefully chosen. Claire's pulse slowed instead of speeding up. Chloe tilted her head. "John has always enjoyed surprises," she said. "Even when they make people uncomfortable." She paused. "So when he arrived tonight with his own maid, I thought, why not acknowledge it?" The word landed hard. Maid. No whisper this time, no subtlety. A collective inhale rippled through the hall. Claire felt the room lean toward her, waiting for collapse. John stepped forward immediately. "Stop," he said. Chloe held up a hand. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she replied. "I'm not insulting her. I admire loyalty, especially when it comes from employees." Laughter followed, nervous, complicit. Claire could feel it now, the weight, the expectation. This was the moment they wanted, the humiliation. She took one step forward. John reached for her arm, instinctive. She shook her head once, just once. Claire faced Chloe. "I am not his maid tonight," she said calmly. The room stilled. "I clean houses," she continued. "I work hard. I pay my bills late sometimes. I know exactly where I come from." No apology, no shame. "But I don't belong to anyone," Claire said. "And I don't disappear just because it's convenient." The microphone trembled slightly in Chloe's hand. Claire went on. "You invited me here by trying to erase me," she said, "and you failed." Silence swallowed the hall. No clapping, no gasps, just awareness. Chloe's smile froze. John watched Claire with something close to awe. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't attacked. She had simply stood still and told the truth, a truth the elite had no defense against. Chloe lowered the microphone slowly. "This isn't the place," she said tightly. "You made it the place," Claire replied. A beat passed. Then John spoke. "She's done," he said, his voice carrying easily without amplification. "And so are you." Chloe turned to him, eyes flashing. "This was never about her," she said. "This was about us." John shook his head. "No," he said. "This is about who we became when we were together." The guests shifted uncomfortably now. Some looked at Claire with something new in their eyes. Respect. Chloe forced a laugh and handed the microphone back to the bandleader. "Music," she said sharply. The band obeyed. The room exhaled, but the damage was done. The narrative had slipped from Chloe's grasp. And as Claire stepped back beside John, heart steady, spine straight, she realized something had changed. Not around her, inside her. She had walked into the room as a poor girl expected to endure judgment. She was standing in it as a woman who no longer accepted it. Across the hall, Chloe watched them, jaw tight, eyes cold. This was not over. It had simply moved somewhere more private, somewhere with no audience. And that was where Chloe believed she still held the advantage. The terrace doors stood open, letting in the night air. Claire stepped outside without announcing it. She needed distance, space where the walls didn't listen. The city stretched below, lights sharp against the dark. Expensive. Untouchable. She rested her hands on the railing. Inside, the music continued. Applause rose again, forced back into place. The wedding moved on as if nothing had cracked, but something had. Footsteps approached. Chloe. She closed the doors behind her, sealing them in silence. "I wondered how long it would take," Chloe said. Claire didn't turn. "You should leave," Chloe continued, "before this becomes embarrassing for you." Claire breathed slowly. "You already tried that," she said. "It didn't work." Chloe laughed softly. "You think you won something?" she asked. "You're still what you were when you walked in." Claire turned then. "And you're still afraid," she replied. Chloe's smile vanished. "John ruins people who don't know their place," Chloe said sharply. "I learned that. You will too." Claire shook her head. "He didn't ruin you," she said. "You just ran out of mirrors." Chloe stepped closer. "You're a phase," she said. "A reaction. When this ends, he'll go back to what fits." Claire looked past her, toward the glass. "I know," she said quietly. The words caught Chloe off guard. "I know this won't last," Claire continued. "That's why I'm leaving." Chloe frowned. "Leaving?" "Yes," Claire said. "Tonight. On my terms." She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope John had given her. Held it out. "This was help," she said. "Not a promise." Chloe scoffed. "You think that makes you noble?" "No," Claire replied. "It makes me honest." The terrace doors opened again. John stood there. He had heard enough. "Claire," he said. She turned toward him, surprise flickering across her face. "I was coming to find you," he continued. They told me you stepped outside. Chloe laughed once, sharp and bitter. Perfect timing, she said. Your guest was just explaining how temporary this all is. John didn't look at Chloe. He walked straight to Claire. Is that what you think? He asked. Claire hesitated. I don't want to be another weapon, she said. Or another excuse. John's jaw tightened. You're neither, he said. You're the reason I stopped pretending. Chloe crossed her arms. This is emotional theater, she said. You'll regret it. John finally turned to her. I already regret staying silent, he said. I won't regret choosing. He looked back at Claire. Stay, he said. Not for them. For you. The word settled between them. Stay. Claire searched his face. Not for promises, for truth. She found it. Slowly, she placed the envelope back into her bag. I'll stay, she said. But not quietly. John nodded once. That's all I ask. Chloe stepped back, her control finally cracking. You think this ends anything? She asked. John's voice was calm. It ends us. The terrace fell silent. Inside, the music swelled louder, unaware that the last thread tying John Underwood to his past had just been cut. He offered his arm. Claire took it. Not as a maid, not as a symbol, as a woman making a choice. Together they turned back toward the doors. And as they re-entered the light, the elite sensed it. Something irreversible had just happened. They didn't know what the final cost would be. Only that Chloe Winfield was no longer in control of the story. They didn't go back to the center of the room. John guided Claire toward the edge of the hall, where conversations thinned and faces turned more openly. Word had already spread. It always did. Chloe followed. Not immediately, not impulsively. She waited until enough eyes were watching. John, she called. The music softened again, not by request, by instinct. She stepped forward, bouquet still in hand, veil untouched, the picture of composure, cracked just enough to be visible. You don't get to rewrite this, Chloe said. Not here. John turned to face her. I'm not rewriting anything, he replied. I'm ending it. A murmur rippled through the room. Chloe's smile twitched. You humiliated me, she said. In front of everyone. John didn't raise his voice. You humiliated yourself, he said, by needing an audience. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned in. Chloe laughed, sharp and breathless. This is about revenge, she said. You couldn't stand watching me move on. John shook his head slowly. If that were true, he said, I would have come alone. The words landed hard. Claire felt it, the moment the room recalibrated. Chloe's eyes flicked to her. This is who you choose, Chloe asked. A poor woman who cleans your house? Yes, John said, because she doesn't. Silence. Chloe's hand tightened around the bouquet. She's using you, Chloe said, just like everyone else. Claire took a step forward before John could respond. No, she said. I was offered help. I accepted it. I never asked for power. She looked around the room. You're confusing dignity with ambition, Claire continued. They're not the same. A few heads lowered, others stiffened. Chloe's control slipped further. You think this makes you equal? She snapped. Claire met her gaze. I think it makes me visible, she said. That was it. Chloe's laugh broke, too loud, too fast. You always needed an audience, she said to John. Even now. John took a breath. I needed the truth, he said, and I avoided it for too long. He turned slightly, addressing the room now. I won't participate in games that trade respect for appearances, he said. Not anymore. The elite had no script for this. No clever response. No polished recovery. Chloe looked around, searching for support. It didn't come. The silence was heavier than any accusation. She straightened her shoulders, mask snapping back into place. Enjoy your performance, she said coldly. Both of you. She turned and walked away, heels striking the floor harder than before. The music resumed. Conversations restarted, but something fundamental had shifted. John exhaled slowly. He turned to Claire. Are you all right? She nodded. Yes, she said. I think I always was. I just wasn't allowed to be. He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then, without ceremony, he offered his arm again. This time, there was no hesitation. Claire took it. Not because she needed protection, because she chose partnership. Together they walked back into the center of the room. And as they did, eyes followed, not with mockery, but with recognition. The humiliation that had been prepared for Claire had found its target, and it had not landed where Chloe intended. They moved through the room together, not quickly, not defiantly, simply present. Conversations resumed around them, but the tone had changed. People watched openly now. No whispers, no laughter behind hands, just attention stripped of its cruelty. Claire felt it. She was no longer being assessed. She was being acknowledged. A woman they passed offered a small nod, uncertain, respectful. A man stepped aside to give them space. The social gap had not vanished, but it no longer pressed down on her shoulders. John felt it too. For the first time in years, he wasn't managing perception. He wasn't correcting narratives or anticipating attacks. He was standing where he chose to stand. They stopped near the edge of the dance floor. Music played softly. Guests swayed. The wedding continued, but its center had shifted away from ceremony and toward consequence. Claire glanced at John. You didn't have to do all that, she said. Yes, he replied. I did. She studied him. You're not doing this out of spite, she said, or strategy. No, he agreed. I'm done with both. That was the difference. Earlier, he had come prepared to endure, to control, to exit cleanly. Now, he was staying without armor. Across the room, Chloe stood surrounded by people, laughing again, polished, composed. But something essential was missing: control. She glanced toward John and Claire once more. Their eyes did not meet. For the first time, she was no longer the axis of his attention. Claire felt a quiet clarity settle in her chest. She had not won by becoming someone else. She had not crossed class lines by pretending they didn't exist. She had stood inside them without bending. A poor girl had not been erased. A maid had not been reduced. She had been seen. John extended his arm again, not looking at her this time, not asking. It was simply there. Claire took it. The gesture no longer meant protection. It meant alignment. They walked toward the exit together, not to leave, but to breathe. To stand somewhere quieter, away from the performance. Behind them, the wedding carried on. Ahead of them, nothing was defined. No promises, no labels, no rehearsed future. Only a shared understanding. John would no longer accept relationships built on power and appearance. Claire would no longer accept invisibility as the cost of survival. They stopped near the open doors, night air slipping in around them. For a moment they stood side by side, saying nothing. Then they stepped forward again, together. And the room, once so eager to decide who mattered, was left watching as two people chose something simpler: respect. And this time, the story no longer belonged to the elite. It belonged to the ones who refused to disappear. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel. New stories like this are posted regularly. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand your ground in a place that wanted you invisible?